What kind of mother wakes up from a nap missing half her hair and then hears her own son say it was good for her? I didn't scream. I didn't even understand at first. I just kept asking one question. Why would someone who claims to love me do this? And whatever answer you're thinking, my truth was uglier. My name is Helen Carter, widow, 59. Quiet life, quiet house, until the day curiosity turned into horror. I woke up from a short nap on the couch, stretching like always, except something felt off. My shoulder felt exposed, lighter. When my fingers brushed my neck, instead of smooth strands, they hit jagged edges. Hair stuck to my shirt. Hair all over the carpet. My hair. I stood slowly like my body was afraid to know more. Metal tapped lightly from the kitchen. Click, click. I followed it. There stood Cassie, my daughter-in-law, casually holding silver scissors, twirling them like she was bored. No apology, not even surprise, just a smirk.
"You look better," she said. "Someone your age shouldn't cling to long hair." Before I could react, my son, my own child, looked up from his phone and added, "Yeah, Mom, Cassie's right. You needed a lesson." A lesson. As if this was school, as if I was a disobedient child, as if kindness gave them control over me. Something inside me cracked, but I didn't let them see. What hurt wasn't the hair on the floor. It was the realization they didn't see me as family anymore. They saw me as inconvenience. The irony? 3 days later, those same two people stood outside my door begging for forgiveness. But back then, the house felt different. Warm, safe, almost peaceful. Coffee aroma in the mornings, Daniel's memory in every corner, routine that made loneliness tolerable. That's why I let them move in. Mark called saying rent climbed and Cassie's hours got cut. He didn't even finish before I said yes. I imagined family dinners, laughter returning to hallways that had stayed too silent. Cassie smiled politely, but her eyes stayed guarded, like she was evaluating, not accepting. They moved in on a bright Friday. Mark carrying boxes, Cassie rolling a squeaky suitcase, glancing around as though deciding what to change. I offered them the best guest room, antique dresser, handmade quilt, the blue curtains Daniel loved.
Cassie looked at it like the room was dated, beneath her. I swallowed the sting. At first, their presence felt almost comforting. Mark fixed the porch light. Cassie joined me grocery shopping, but walked ahead, always correcting, always commenting. "You shouldn't drink cream," she said once. "At your age, you need to watch your health." I laughed it off. I didn't realize those words were seeds, growing into something poisonous. The first shift happened at dinner. Roast chicken and mashed potatoes, Mark's old favorite. Cassie inspected the plate as if it was unhealthy, disgusting even. "Do you always cook so heavy? People our age eat cleaner." Our age. She was 28. Mark didn't defend me. "She's just helping, Mom." Later, when I reached to clear plates, Cassie swept them away. "You shouldn't strain yourself." I didn't know whether she was helping me or erasing me. Days passed. Groceries became my expense. Gas money, too. Mark lost another job. Weekly transfers started. Cassie never acknowledged the support, but her online shopping never stopped, packages arriving constantly. I told myself families go through rough patches. Mothers lie to themselves when the truth is too painful to admit. I was being used. The breaking moment came one afternoon. Sorting through mail, a folded paper slipped out. Cassie's handwriting, numbers, sale estimates, notes calculating the value of my home. At the top, estimated sale value of Helen's property. My stomach dropped. I slid the paper into a drawer next to Daniel's letters, the place where painful truths lived. That night felt cold. Mark and Cassie came home laughing, unaware that I knew. Steam lifted from my mug like a warning sign. I pictured Cassie tracing value into the walls I built, her eyes calculating what she didn't earn. When I finally went to bed, I couldn't sleep. A question pressed against me all night. If they could cut my hair without consent, what else would they take? At sunrise, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just hurt, I was wary. So the next morning, I made coffee, cooked breakfast, and waited, silent, watching. Cassie walked in, humming brightly, unaware that the game had changed. She thought she was in control. She had no idea. Her little lesson was about to become a lesson she never expected. I didn't confront them at first. People assume anger makes you shout, but real betrayal, it makes you quiet, calculating. That morning, while Cassie hummed in her neon workout clothes, she didn't notice the way I was looking at her. She didn't know I'd seen her note about selling my home. She just sat at the table, scrolling through condos she couldn't afford, not without what she believed would soon be mine. Mark joined her, rubbing his eyes, acting like nothing was wrong. "Mom," he said casually, "Cassie was thinking maybe we could redecorate the guest room, make it more, modern." My pulse ticked. Cassie sipped her green juice. "It would raise the value of the property," she said, voice smooth. "Property, not home, not my home, just property." I swallowed the words in my throat. "Let's talk about it later," I said. Cassie's smile tightened, disappointment hidden under politeness. That was the moment I realized she wasn't waiting for me to agree. She was expecting me to surrender. The house used to be a sanctuary. Now it felt invaded, like someone rearranged the air I breathed. Cassie began moving things without asking, replacing curtains, shifting furniture, hiding old family photos in drawers. Every change said the same thing: erase yourself, make room for me. Mark noticed, but didn't say a word. Maybe silence was easier for him, or maybe he thought I'd never push back. One afternoon, I saw Cassie measuring the living room walls. "What are you doing?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Visualizing renovations." Renovations for a home that wasn't hers. I walked away before she saw my hand shake. But the real turning point came when Daniel's kept memories disappeared. A wooden box, his letters, watch, and our wedding photo vanished. I searched the drawers, closet, hall shelf. Nothing. My chest clenched. I knocked on their door. Cassie opened it, eyebrow arched. "Yes?" "My husband's box. Have you seen it?" "Oh," she said, voice light. "I moved it. That old thing didn't match the aesthetic." She pointed under the bed, dusty, crushed between workout shoes and magazines. Something snapped inside me. "I'd appreciate it if you asked before touching my things." Her tone chilled. "Well, if we're living here, decisions affect all of us. You can't be territorial." Territorial. Over my husband's memory? Over my home? That night, tears didn't come. I was past crying. I just lay awake thinking, how did my generosity
become permission for disrespect. The haircutting incident happened 2 days later, and suddenly, everything made sense. Cassie didn't want space. She wanted control. And Mark, my son, became her echo. After he defended her mutilating my hair, they walked out laughing, whispering in their room. I cleaned the strands of hair alone, sweeping the pieces like they were fragments of who I used to be. Every time I stooped down, one thought stuck. They thought I would break. But I wasn't breaking. I was waking up.
That evening, I called Mark to the kitchen. "Sit," I said. He slouched, eyes glued to his phone. "Mark, why would you let someone cut my hair while I slept?" He didn't meet my gaze. "Mom, don't be dramatic. Cassie just helped you. You cling to outdated things." Outdated. Like love, respect, autonomy? "Do you hear yourself?" I whispered. But Mark wasn't listening. He was repeating. "Cassie just wants what's best for you." What's best? No, what's convenient. Cassie walked in mid-conversation. "Oh, are we still talking about the hair thing? Helen, you're acting so fragile." Fragile. I stared at her. Who taught this girl she could treat people like furniture? Who taught my son to apologize more for her discomfort than my pain? That night, something shifted. I wasn't just hurt. I was curious. How far would they go? How much of me did they think they owned? What did they believe was theirs to take? The next morning, Cassie tapped on my door. "Since your hair is uneven, I booked you a salon appointment. You need to fix it." I smiled. "No, I'll handle it." She blinked, surprised. It was the first time I denied her anything. She left, annoyed. Mark followed her like an obedient shadow. That afternoon, I went somewhere else. Not a salon, a lawyer. A quiet office smelling of old books and certainty. I explained everything: the financial help, the behavior, the haircutting. He listened carefully. Then he leaned forward. "Mrs. Carter, do you have a will?" I nodded. "And do they benefit from it?" "Yes." He exhaled. "Then they think your house will eventually be theirs." My stomach twisted. "But you don't have to leave it to them," he said gently. "One change, and suddenly you have leverage." Leverage. Power. Choice. For the first time in weeks, my lungs felt open. We drafted something together, a new will, notarized, sealed. Then he offered another suggestion. "You can ask them to leave legally if needed." I felt something like hope. I wasn't trapped. I had simply forgotten I had rights. When I returned home that evening, Cassie was pacing. "Oh, good, finally," she snapped. "We need to talk." Mark hovered behind her. "What happened this morning was disrespectful. You embarrassed me. I made that appointment to help you." My voice was quiet. "I don't need your help." Cassie's eyes widened, offense dripping from her. Mark stepped forward. "Cassie was right. You needed a lesson." There it was again, that phrase, a lesson. That night in bed, I whispered to the dark, "One change, and suddenly you have leverage." Leverage. Power. Choice. For the first time in weeks, my lungs felt open. We drafted something together, a new will, notarized, sealed. Then he offered another suggestion. "You can ask them to leave legally if needed." I felt something like hope. I wasn't trapped. I had simply forgotten I had rights. When I returned home that evening, Cassie was pacing. "Oh, good, finally," she snapped. "We need to talk." Mark hovered behind her.
What happened this morning was disrespectful. You embarrassed me. I made that appointment to help you." My voice was quiet. "I don't need your help." Cassie's eyes widened, offense dripping from her. Mark stepped forward. "Cassie was right. You needed a lesson." There it was again, that phrase, a lesson. That night in bed, I whispered to the dark, what would happen if they learned a lesson instead? 2 days later, I set the plan in motion. I cooked breakfast. I smiled. I acted like nothing had changed. Cassie was too busy planning imaginary renovations to notice. Mark lounged lazily, waiting for me to bring him coffee. They believed I was still their doormat. But I wasn't. At noon, there was a knock on the door. Cassie opened it, expecting a delivery. Instead, a courier stood holding 2 envelopes addressed to Mark and Cassie. They signed, confused. They opened them in the living room. Cassie's face drained first. "What is this?" Mark's voice cracked. "Eviction notice?" I stood in the hallway, watching them fight for composure. Cassie nearly screamed, "You can't do this!" I walked forward, slow and steady. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I can." Their lesson had begun, and they didn't like being on the receiving end. Cassie turned on Mark. "Fix this." Mark looked at me, the first time his confidence wavered. "Mom, please tell me this is a misunderstanding." I didn't break eye contact. "No misunderstanding. 30 days. Then I want my house back." Cassie shook her head, furious. "You can't survive without us. You need us." I smiled, calm. "No, Cassie, you assumed I did." Her jaw clenched. Mark sank into the chair, defeated. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The same curiosity I'd felt earlier twisted inside him now. What comes next? They had no idea. Their punishment hadn't even truly begun. But soon they would. For the first time in months, the house felt silent. Not empty, but relieved. Cassie's voice was gone. Mark's nervous pacing had stopped. The air felt still, like it was waiting for something. Maybe I was waiting too. I stood in the hallway holding a stack of folded sheets. Cassie sheets. Lavender-scented, expensive, stiff with starch, not warmth. I paused, listening to the quiet. Then the phone rang. Catherine. "Helena," she said, voice tight. "They're at the station, waiting. The officer notified me just now." I exhaled slowly, a little too calmly. "Oh, then let them wait." Silence on her end, then a soft laugh. "You're stronger than you think." I wasn't. Not yet. But I was learning. I set the sheets down and walked into the kitchen. The kettle whistled. Sharp. Bright. Almost cheerful. Funny how appliances didn't care about betrayal. I poured my tea, hands steady. "They would come back," Catherine said. "They always do when consequences appear." I didn't doubt it. The front door rattled before I finished my first sip. 3 sharp knocks. I didn't rush. When I opened it, Cassie stood there. Mascara streaked, hair wild, the confident gloss stripped clean. Mark beside her, looking like a boy who'd lost his homework. "Mom," he began, but I didn't let my eyes linger on him. Cassie broke first. "You can't actually do this." Her voice cracked, not with remorse, but disbelief. "Do what?" I asked gently. "Put us on the street." Her fingers shook. "You wouldn't survive without Mark." That sentence, that tone, the belief that I was helpless, dependent on them when I had survived before they even existed.
Mark stepped closer. Mom, we didn't mean for things to go that far. It was emotions, stress. Cassie shouldn't have cut your hair, but... My voice was soft. Too soft. Cassie nudged him. Just tell her we're sorry. Sorry. Such a small word when someone carves away pieces of you. I stepped aside. Come in, I said. Their shoulders dropped in relief, but relief was premature. They walked to the kitchen like returning royalty, Cassie dropping her purse loudly on the table. So where will we sleep? She asked. I set my cup down and turned. You won't. Her face twisted. What? You won't be staying here. Mark's eyebrows shot up. Mom, we said we're sorry. And I heard you, I replied. But apologies without change are air. Cassie's cheeks flushed red. You can't do this. We need a place. Catherine prepared housing paperwork, temporary lodging, financial review, adult arrangements. Cassie looked at Mark, waiting for him to explode. But Mark rubbed his face and whispered, We messed up. His voice sounded small, defeated. Cassie glared at him. What is wrong with you? She's manipulating you. I watched him. Mark, I said quietly, when did you last visit because you missed me, not because you needed something? His shoulders slumped. Cassie crossed her arms. This is ridiculous. We are family. Families do not strip dignity for convenience or slice hair while someone sleeps. Mark flinched. Cassie didn't. Mom, please, he tried again. Just one more chance. We'll do chores, help out, whatever you want. You already had chances, I said. One when you moved in, another every time you ignored how she spoke to me. And most importantly, the moment you watched her cut my hair and called it a lesson.
Mark swallowed hard. Cassie rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. No, she was unraveling. You will take Catherine's arrangement, I told them. You will learn responsibility. Cassie laughed, a brittle, panicked sound. We don't need your charity. Her voice broke with the last word, fear behind arrogance. Then leave, I said. Mark looked at me, really looked. His eyes softened. Mom. His voice cracked. I didn't realize. No, I said gently. You didn't want to realize. Sometimes truth hurts more than anything done to us. Cassie grabbed his arm. We are not staying in some cheap dump Catherine found. Mark didn't move. Cassie, we don't have another place. She glared at me, hatred blooming where entitlement used to sit. You ruined everything. No, I said. You taught yourself a lesson. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. She yanked her suitcase and stormed past me. Mark stayed frozen. Mom, will you ever forgive me? I stepped closer, cupping his cheek like when he was 5. Yes, I whispered, but forgiveness doesn't erase distance. You need to learn your own strength, away from me. He nodded slowly. Tears gathered, but didn't fall. I'll call, he whispered. Call when you want to talk, not when you need. Cassie called from outside, angry and impatient. Mark looked down. I love you. I love you too. It wasn't a reconciliation. It was a release. He walked away, shoulders heavy, but steps steadier than Cassie's frantic ones. I closed the door. The house swallowed the moment. Silence. Familiar, but different. Heavier. Honest. I walked back into my room, fingers brushing shorter strands of hair at my neck. Ugly. Uneven. A reminder. But also proof, not of what they did, but that I survived it. I opened the drawer where their home sale paper still lay, took it out, folded it once, twice, then burned it in a dish by the window. Smoke curled upward, thin and liberating. A lesson for all of us. Later that evening, Catherine stopped by. She leaned on the doorway, studying my calm expression. So, she asked, how does it feel? I brewed 2 cups of tea. Like breathing, I said. She smiled knowingly. You chose yourself. I finally remembered how. We sat in silence, sipping warmth. Outside, the streetlights flickered. Somewhere far away, a car honked. Life kept moving. Will they change? I asked quietly. Maybe. Pain teaches what comfort never will. I stared at the flame still dancing in the dish. Cassie cut my hair to humiliate me, to shrink me. But she carved the wrong person. Because the woman she tried to belittle came back sharper. Catherine squeezed my hand. You didn't ask for this battle, Helena, she said. But you won it. For the first time, I believed her. Even with uneven hair, even with a heart still aching, the house wasn't empty now. It was mine again. And this time, I would protect it, not out of fear, but because I remembered I mattered. Days passed, not loud, not rushed, just steady, like water smoothing stone. Catherine checked in often, sometimes under the guise of returning a file she never borrowed, other times to share news. Mock attended the housing interview, she said one afternoon over tea. Cassie argued with the officer, naturally. I almost smiled, almost. Soft mornings came next, sun filtering through thin curtains, birds fussing in the trees. I took long walks, the wind brushing my short, uneven hair, reminding me of what was gone and what stayed. People stared a little. Short hair at my age wasn't unusual, but the jagged cut was. I didn't explain. They didn't ask. Freedom can be quiet. On the 5th day, a white envelope appeared at my door. No stamp, just handwriting I had memorized raising Mark. Mom, can we talk? I ran my fingers over the paper. Not, we need you. Not, we're coming back. Just, can we talk? Progress lived in tiny sentences. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I continued something that had become ritual, sweeping the porch. It wasn't dirty, but motion kept me steady. By evening, Catherine called again. He's in counseling, she said. Mandatory financial management classes, anger accountability for Cassie. She refused twice, but Mark's attending. Good, I whispered. Not cruelly, with relief. Actions rearrange people where words cannot. Sunday arrived.
I baked bread, not because anyone was coming, but because scent fills homes with life. Around noon, a knock. I opened the door to see Mark standing alone. No Cassie clinging to him like armor. His clothing was wrinkled, hair unstyled, not lazy, but unguarded. "Hi, Mom." I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked in like someone unsure if they were allowed. He glanced around. The same living room, but something was missing. His noise, her presence. He finally said, "I didn't know where to start."
"Start anywhere," I answered. He looked at me then. Not the son defending his wife, but the boy who once cried after losing a toy. The teenager who apologized for denting the car. "I thought Cassie was helping me," he said quietly. "She made me feel like you were stuck in the past, that you needed direction, that she knew better. And you believed her." He nodded. "I did, because it was easier to let someone else lead." We sat. "Why did you watch her cut my hair?" It slipped out before I could soften it. His face broke. "I thought you were asleep," he swallowed. "I thought it was harmless, a prank. She said you'd laugh, that you were too sensitive about your age." The truth hurt worse than the lie, that he didn't think I would hurt. "I didn't stand up for you," he admitted. "And that's the part I can't forgive myself for." I didn't rush to soothe him. The old me would have. But silence makes people confront themselves. Finally, he whispered, "Cassie hates Catherine. She blames her for everything. My choices had nothing to do with Catherine. I enforced them." He met my eyes. "That's what Cassie can't accept, that you aren't weak." A strange thing happened in that moment. I felt pity. Not for him, for her. Because some people only feel powerful when someone else kneels. "Where is she?" I asked. "We're living apart, for now." His voice cracked. "We argued. She said if I was choosing you, she'd leave." "And?" He looked at me, almost scared. "I told her she could go." My heart twisted, not in victory, but in grief for how far he had come. "We're doing therapy," he said, "individual first." "That's good." He hesitated, then reached in his pocket and pulled out something small. Silver scissors. Cassie's. He placed them on the table like they were evidence. "I kept these. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I carried them, I wouldn't forget what I allowed." Painful truth, but necessary truth. I touched the scissors lightly. They were ordinary, common, yet symbols of everything that broke. "I don't want them," I said. "Neither do I." He handed me another envelope. Ticker. "Counseling said I need to give back what I took or used." Inside were receipts. Bank transfers I didn't even remember making. Lists from the housing agency, his new budget plan. He wasn't seeking permission. He was showing responsibility. That mattered more than any apology. Finally, he asked, "Can I visit sometimes?" Yes, I said, when you're ready. We stood. He hugged me, but carefully, as if afraid to crush what was fragile. I love you, he whispered again. I know. Now learn to show it. He nodded, wiped his eyes, and left. I watched him walk down the path, shoulders straighter than when he arrived. The door clicked shut. Silence returned, but this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Later that evening, the phone rang. Cassie. I didn't answer. Instead, I set her number to voicemail.
She didn't want redemption. She wanted control, and I wasn't offering that anymore. 2 days later, Catherine brought me a thin folder. Resolution papers, she said. Housing program noted compliance. Mark has his provisional placement. Cassie is still resisting. Some people don't change, I murmured. Some just take longer, Catherine replied. We sat at the kitchen table, not as savior and saved, but as women who understood battles. She leaned back. So what now, Helena? I ran my fingers over my hair, still uneven, still growing. Now, I said, I fix what I can. I booked a salon appointment the next morning. When the stylist touched my hair, she gasped softly. What happened to you? A lesson, I said, one I learned well. She trimmed carefully, gently, shaping what was butchered. Piece by piece, strands fell. When she turned the chair toward the mirror, I almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. Stronger. Older, yes, but defined. Owned. Hair didn't make that change. Choice did. I paid and walked outside. Wind brushed my neck again, but this time I smiled. Something small and brave whispered, there is life after hurt, and you are in it. That evening, the house didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a beginning. Cassie's scissors sat in a drawer. I didn't keep them as a reminder of pain, but as proof of growth, because scars do not define us, but how we rise from them does. And tomorrow, when Mark calls, not because he needs shelter, but because he wants connection, I will answer, not from weakness, but from strength. The days that followed were strangely quiet, not lonely, just different, like someone had turned down a radio that had been blaring for months. I learned the sound of my house again, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the old wall clock, the creak of Daniel's favorite rocking chair whenever a breeze slipped in. Then, about a week later, I heard another sound, a car engine idling in my driveway. I peered through the curtains. Cassie. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but her posture was unmistakable. Rigid spine, jaw clenched, chin tilted in entitlement. She didn't knock. She called. Her voice came through the speaker like ice. Helena, we need to talk. I didn't open the door. She tried again. I know Mark has been feeding you lies. You need to let him go. He belongs with me. Something inside me flinched, not from her words, but from the realization of how she still believed I was someone to manipulate. I ignored the call. Minutes ticked. Then she marched up and pounded on the door. You owe me a conversation. You owe me respect. I almost laughed. Respect is earned, not demanded. Eventually, her knocking stopped, replaced by retreating footsteps. I thought she had left. But 20 minutes later, Catherine texted me, "Don't engage. She's headed to the courthouse, trying to file a harassment claim against you." I stared at the screen. Harassment? I hadn't spoken to her in nearly 2 weeks. Control is a funny thing. When people lose it, they look for any weapon to reclaim it. Catherine arrived an hour later, documents in hand, her voice sharp with disbelief. "She's accusing you of emotional destabilization, claims you coerced Mark against her. Is there any merit to it?" I asked. "None," Catherine scoffed. "But she thrives on chaos." I sighed. Let her try. 3 days passed. On Friday morning, Catherine called again. She withdrew the complaint. The judge dismissed it before hearing. Insufficient evidence. I nodded. Of course she did. Failing publicly was never part of Cassie's script. I thought that was the end of it, but life has a habit of throwing one last spark before the finale. Sunday afternoon, Mark came by, this time with papers in his hand. He sat at the table, the same place where he once defended her. "Mom," he said, voice tired, "I'm filing for separation." I didn't speak, not immediately. He looked up, hesitant. "She doesn't want therapy. She doesn't want accountability. She wants revenge. And you?" "I want peace." Something fragile and proud pressed against my ribs. "That's the first truly adult sentence I've heard you say in months," I whispered.
His eyes softened. "I'm sorry it took hurting you to learn." "No," I corrected gently. "It took you seeing yourself." He exhaled, long and heavy. "We signed nothing. It wasn't my business to sign, but he showed me the paperwork like someone needing a witness to his choice." The next day, Cassie showed up again. This time, she didn't knock. She sat on my steps, waiting. I opened the door, not for her, but because the wind had changed. "Are you happy now?" she spat. I didn't bite. "You cut my hair," I said quietly. "Why?" The question startled her. Her composure cracked. "Because you made him weak," she hissed. "He listened to you more than me. You were always above me, untouchable, perfect." Ah, there it was. The truth hidden under cruelty. Envy. I didn't feel triumphant, just sad. "You didn't need to destroy me," I replied. "You could have stood beside me." Her face twisted. "That's not how power works." "Exactly," I whispered. "That's why you lost." She stood abruptly, eyes blazing. "You'll regret this." "No," I corrected softly. "You will." And I shut the door. That night, I cooked myself dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the same meal she once mocked. Halfway through eating, a thought hit me. I didn't flinch. I wasn't shrinking at my own table. This house, my life, wasn't haunted anymore. Later, I lit a candle in the hallway, something Daniel used to do when he wanted peace in the home. Flame flickered, soft and steady. Moments later, my phone buzzed. Mark again. Her parents came to pick her up. We're done. I stared at the message, not triumphantly, but tenderly. Some endings aren't victories. They're releases. Before bed, I stood in front of the mirror, fresh haircut, new outline. For the first time in a long time, I liked the woman looking back. A quiet whisper rose inside me. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it trims itself slowly, like new hair growing where harm once lived. I turned off the light. Sleep came easily, not as escape, but as belonging. Tomorrow would be ordinary, but ordinary finally felt safe again. The days after Cassie left felt strangely empty. Mark's visits were steady but careful. Quiet conversations over coffee, short walks, Phone calls that lingered just long enough to reassure me that he was finding his own footing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered, just beyond my line of sight. It wasn't Cassie's presence. It was the shadow of control she had left behind, a tension embedded in the walls, in the air, in the silence. I walked through the house slowly, room by room, noticing little things. The living room rug, still slightly out of place where Cassie had tugged it to make it fit her style. The guest room, curtains now crooked, like a subtle reminder that someone had tried to mark territory. Even the kitchen drawers, a few mismatched utensils, a pen not where it belonged. Everywhere I looked, I saw her fingerprints. Not literal, but in a sense, they were imprinted on my sense of safety, like a ghost who didn't belong but had claimed a corner anyway. I went into the bedroom and touched my hair. Short now, neat, growing back evenly. I ran my fingers along the uneven edges that remained, feeling the story embedded there. Each strand reminded me of the day I woke up to betrayal, the day my son said I needed a lesson, and the day I realized they believed they had power over me. But the truth was, I had the power all along. That evening, Mark arrived again, this time carrying a box. He looked nervous, even careful. I found this at Cassie's place, he said quietly, setting the box on the table. Inside were small items, a pair of scissors, some hair clips, a notebook with her planning notes, and a few letters addressed to him. He hesitated. I thought, maybe you should see what she was thinking. I opened the notebook carefully. There were pages of plans, strategies, and calculations, not about love, not about family, but about controlling me, controlling Mark, and eventually controlling everything I had built. The words were precise, cold, almost clinical. I could almost hear her voice in the margins, smirking, anticipating, calculating. And then a small note at the end caught my eye. He is soft. If I break her, he will come to me. It's only a matter of time. I folded it slowly, letting the weight sink in. So it had never been about love. It had always been about power. Mark looked at me, pale. He admitted, I didn't see it before. I didn't realize how much she manipulated me. I thought I was helping you, but I was just part of her plan. I nodded. You are a boy caught between her ambition and your love for me. It happens. He exhaled, relief mixed with shame. I'm sorry, Mom, for standing there when she cut your hair, for letting her control me. I reached across the table, resting my hand over his. You learned now. That's what matters.
And in that moment, something shifted, not just in Mark, but in me. I realized that the true lesson wasn't hers, it was mine. I had given, I had forgiven, I had tried to maintain peace, but I had allowed myself to shrink, to doubt my own authority in my home. That was over. The next few days, I noticed small changes. Neighbors nodded as I walked past, seeing me return to my confident, deliberate self. The house seemed lighter. Even the sunlight through the curtains felt different. Not a reminder of fear, but a symbol of reclaiming space. And yet, Cassie's shadow lingered in my mind. I couldn't stop imagining her plotting somewhere else, with someone new, ready to manipulate again. That fear was natural. It was part of survival. But I also realized I wasn't helpless anymore. I began writing again. Not letters, not apologies, not plans for others, but my own reflections. I wrote about Daniel, about Mark, about Cassie,
and about the moments I had doubted myself. Every word strengthened the boundaries I had set. Every paragraph reminded me that I was allowed to protect my peace. One night, I was in bed, reviewing the notebook Mark had brought. I noticed a page Cassie had never intended me to see, a hand-drawn diagram of my house with notes about surveillance, control, and manipulation. And in the corner, in tiny letters, if she fights back, we escalate. Never underestimate her fear. I laughed softly. She had counted on me being afraid. She had counted on me shrinking. She had counted on me believing I was powerless. But I wasn't. And that made all the difference. The next morning, Mark arrived for coffee. I poured 2 mugs, careful with the hot steam swirling between us. "Mom," he said, hesitating, "I don't know if I'll ever fully understand what you went through." "You don't need to understand fully," I replied. "Just remember, you can't hand over your life to anyone else. Not your spouse, not your partner, not even someone you love." He nodded slowly, absorbing every word. "Cassie, she'll try again," he whispered. "Let her," I said, voice calm. "She can't reach what isn't hers anymore." The words were true, and more importantly, they were final. Later that week, I received a small package at the door. Inside was a single note from Cassie. "You may have won this time, but I'm not done." I set the note down carefully. Did I feel fear? A tiny flicker, maybe. But it didn't matter. I poured another cup of tea and walked into the living room. The house was quiet, still, my hair short, my mind clear, my boundaries set. I thought about her words, "I'm not done," and I smiled.
Because this time, I knew I was ready. She may try again, but the woman she tried to break is no longer fragile. And the twist, the truth she could never touch, is simple. You cannot control someone who knows their own worth. The week passed slowly, measured by the rhythm of my own breath and footsteps. Mark visited less, cautiously, aware that my patience had limits. I welcomed the quiet, not as emptiness, but as a space reclaimed. Then, one evening, it happened. A knock at the door. Not soft, not polite. Sharp, deliberate. I didn't recognize the pattern at first. Then the voice, cold, defiant. "Open up, Mom." Cassie. She wasn't alone. 2 of her friends, judging from their imposing stance, lingered behind her, holding boxes like weapons. I didn't panic. I didn't flinch. I had expected this. I opened the door. Her eyes were blazing, lips tight, jaw set. The same arrogant tilt of her chin. "You think you won?" she snapped. "You think you can just erase me?" I stepped aside. "Cassie," I said calmly, "it's not erasing. It's boundaries, something you've never respected." Her glare cut through the hallway. "You can't stop me. I'll take what's mine." "You already tried and failed." She laughed, sharp, brittle, unhinged. "Failed? No, I just underestimated you." A pause. Her friends shifted nervously behind her. Cassie's hands twitched. "You should have stayed quiet, stayed passive, listened. You underestimated something that can't be stolen, my sense of self." Her laugh faded. Something like shock crept into her expression. For the first time, she realized I wasn't afraid. I held my ground. The hallway was mine. The air, mine. "You don't understand," she hissed. "Mark will come back to me. You can't keep him." I smiled gently. I didn't keep him. He chose to leave. Mark's choice, not mine, not hers, was the ultimate boundary. Cassie's hands shook. She pointed at me. "You'll pay for this. You'll regret it." I said, "You tried, and you failed. That's all you need to know." Her friends exchanged uneasy glances. Cassie's bravado cracked just enough for me to see the fear beneath. It was exquisite, not cruelly, but as confirmation of truth.
You cannot intimidate someone who owns themselves. 2 hours later, the door slammed behind them. I closed it, locked it, and leaned against it. The house felt alive again, but not the same. Different. Stronger. I walked through the rooms, noticing the small remnants of their presence, the crooked curtains, the misplaced pens, the faint smell of perfume that didn't belong. I touched each trace, each memory, and said aloud, "You do not belong here." And it was true. Mark called the next day. He sounded tired, but relieved. "She left," he said. "Finally, she's with her parents. I think she finally realized she can't manipulate me anymore either." I nodded. Even over the phone, I felt the weight lift. "You did the right thing, Mom." He continued, "I finally see what you endured, what you protected me from. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner." "You noticed now," I replied. "That's what matters." We talked longer than usual, not about Cassie, not about anger, not about her schemes, but about Mark's life, his plans, the small joys that had been overshadowed by tension for months. He laughed for the first time in weeks. Not fake, not polite, real laughter. And I smiled, feeling a fragile peace settle like sunlight across the living room floor. That evening, I walked past the living room mirror and stopped. The short hair framed my face in a way I hadn't expected. I traced the jagged edges that remained from Cassie's scissors. Each line told a story: betrayal, pain, endurance, and finally triumph. I realized something. The true lesson wasn't just about boundaries. It wasn't about Mark or Cassie. It wasn't even about reclaiming a house. It was about my own power. I had survived betrayal. I had survived being undermined by my own son, misled by my daughter-in-law. I had survived their attempt to strip me of dignity. And I had come out intact, stronger, wiser, unafraid. Then, just as I was settling into that newfound peace, another thought crept in. Small, subtle, dangerous. Cassie may be gone physically, but her influence had lingered for months. She had tried to shape my family, my home, my very life. And yet, the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't her influence at all. It was my own doubt that had allowed her power to grow. The twist hit me suddenly. The lesson I needed wasn't about punishing Cassie. It was about reclaiming myself before anyone else could dictate my worth. Everything else, the hair, the house, even Mark's choices, were secondary. I had been asleep while life happened. Now I was awake, and nothing could take that away. That night, I lit Daniel's favorite candle. Its flame flickered gently, casting shadows along the walls. I whispered into the quiet, "I am enough. I am whole. I am not afraid." The words weren't for anyone else, not for Mark, not for Cassie, not even for Catherine. They were for me. And the house, once a stage for control, manipulation, and fear, now breathed with life again, no longer haunted, no longer tense, just mine. And that, I realized, is the ultimate victory. Because sometimes the greatest battles are not against others,
but against the doubt we carry inside ourselves. And the true twist? Even when they tried to destroy me, they only revealed the strength I didn't know I had. Morning light spilled across the living room, soft and golden, touching every corner of the house I had fought to reclaim. For the first time in months, it felt quiet and safe. No tension, no lingering fear, no reminders of control or betrayal. I walked through the rooms slowly, letting my fingertips brush against the furniture. Each piece held memories, some painful, some sweet, but none of it could hurt me now. Not really. And yet, a tiny flicker of curiosity whispered inside me,
Is it truly over? I found Mark in the kitchen, sipping coffee, reading quietly. "Good morning," I said. He looked up, eyes soft. "Morning, Mom. I feel like we can finally breathe." We sat together, no words needed for a while. Then he hesitated. "I just want to say thank you for standing your ground, for protecting me even when I didn't see it." I smiled faintly. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is simply stand still while chaos swirls around you. He nodded. "I finally understand. And I think I finally understand Cassie, too. How far someone will go when they think they can control everything." That made me pause. "Mark," I said gently, "you don't need to understand her to stay safe. You just need to remember your boundaries and your own worth." He looked at me, thoughtful. Then he set down his coffee. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever think she might come back?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked to the front door, looked out at the street. It was quiet, peaceful, the world moving without her influence. Finally, I said, "If she does, she'll find that I'm no longer afraid. And that's the greatest lesson she could ever teach me, without ever meaning to." Mark nodded slowly. There was relief in his eyes. And then he smiled, something real and unforced. The truth had sunk in. Power isn't taken. Power is claimed. That afternoon, I sat at my writing desk, reviewing the notebook Cassie had left behind. It was tempting to read every word, every plan, every thought she had for control. But I realized something vital. Her thoughts weren't mine. Her battles weren't mine. Her power didn't exist without my consent. I closed the notebook, locked it in a drawer, and smiled. I was free. A week later, I received a small, unsigned package at my door. Inside, a single strand of hair. Dark, jagged, unmistakably hers. Attached was a tiny note. "You may have won, but this is not the end." I laughed softly, setting the note down. It didn't frighten me. It wasn't a threat. It was proof. Proof that even when someone tries to control you, their words, their actions, their threats are powerless unless you let them be. I poured a cup of tea, the warmth filling my hands. Then I walked to the mirror, fingers brushing my hair. Short, growing, strong. For the first time in years, I liked the reflection looking back at me. Not because of hair, not because of appearances, but because of strength reclaimed, lessons learned, and dignity preserved. That night, Mark called. "Mom, I think I finally understand," he said. "I won't let anyone manipulate me again. I won't let her or anyone control my life." I replied, "You've learned well. And you," he said quietly, "you taught me without even trying. You didn't fight her. You stood by yourself. That's the lesson I'll never forget." I smiled, feeling a sense of closure, yet curiosity remained.
Life would always bring challenges, new conflicts, unexpected battles. But now I knew one truth. The real victory isn't ending a fight. It's standing unshaken when the fight comes to you. Weeks passed. The house no longer carried tension. Mark visited regularly, rebuilding his own life, slowly, deliberately. I tended the garden, made meals, wrote in my journal, recording lessons, reflections, moments of clarity. And then, one quiet morning, I received an envelope. Inside, a photograph of Cassie. She was older now, softer, not triumphant, not vengeful. She was thinking. On the back, a single line written in unfamiliar handwriting. Some lessons take a lifetime to learn. Thank you for teaching me mine. I held it carefully. For the first time, I realized the true twist. It wasn't just about my dignity, my hair, my home. It was about transformation. Even someone who tried to hurt you can, unknowingly, reflect your own strength back at you. And the final reflection? We can survive betrayal. We can reclaim our lives. And sometimes the hardest battles reveal the most unexpected victories, not for others, but for ourselves. I placed the photograph on the shelf beside Daniel's letters and my journal, and I finally whispered, I am enough. I am whole, and nothing can take that away. The house was mine, the life was mine, and the story, finally, was complete.